You know, I always like to tell you that I live in Colorado. I guess I'm kind of bragging because I like Colorado so well. But it's not wrong. Godliness with contentment is great gain. So I like it that God put me here years ago, and I like today what God is going to do in you. Because today we're going to really look at prosperity. Does God want you to prosper? Is this a timing when you can prosper? Is this such a crazy time? Could your children prosper? And I believe when we look to the Word is bigger than the time. I really do. So I believe today what you're going to hear and receive is very important for you and your children and your grandchildren. Why not? Folks, this is family blessing. So I'm going to be looking at prosperity and giving. And I want to look at just some basic things of giving. For example, I want to look at tithing. You know, tithing is 10% of what your income is. So, people say, well, is it gross or net? Well, I think it depends on what kind of blessing do you want. You want gross blessing or net blessing? And so you make your decision. But I started tithing very young because my mother told me, if you tithe what you make, you will be blessed. Now, you say, how young were you? Well, I was like 10 and 11 years old, and we lived on an apple farm. And so I sold apples, and I could pick up apples that were okay and sell them, on a roadside stand. And my mother said to me, because what I wanted? I wanted to buy clothes with them. And my father was very cautious about money, very German, very frightened, and understandable. He had been an orphan. So, money, that was a fearful thing to him. So when I started selling apples, he said I could use the money to buy clothes. But my mother said to me, because she read the Bible, you need to tithe. Well, what's tithing? Well, she said you need to give 10% of what you make, and God will bless what you do. He'll bless your selling of apples. So I started tithing very young, and God blessed my apples. I mean, that was really something. So when people say tithing doesn't work, don't tell me that. I started probably much younger than you started. So I want to talk about giving. And where does your tithe go? And your tithe goes where you are fed. So, and I really commit to a local church. I think we need to have a pastor. If you're not a pastor, I think you need a pastor. So I see it in the Bible. It's just that way. Now you say, well, tithing had to do with the law. Really? Tithing was before the law because Abraham tithed and he was before the law. Now you say, well, Jesus didn't teach tithing. Yes, he did. He taught it in the New Testament. He commended a man who was a Gentile, who was a tither, And so we begin to see a thread of how God wants to prosper us. So I began tithing on my apples. We went to a little Methodist church. We lived in the country, and God began to bless me. And so from the time I was like 11, 12 years old, I began to buy all my clothes because I tithed on those apples I picked up, and I had enough to buy clothes, and that made my father slap happy, But then I remember saying to my father, I would like to go to a university. I think I would like to go to college because I really liked foreign languages. And my father said, wonderful, but I can't pay it. You will have to pay it. It'll be up to you. So I was a tither. I was a tither all during college, all during my university years. I worked on Saturdays, on weekends. Now, this is quite a miracle, so I want you to believe me. Put your hand on your heart. Say, I believe you. You're not going to tell me a lie. I tithed, and I graduated with no debt. And I even had a fur coat in college. I probably was the only one on campus, but I had a beautiful fur coat. So if you say to me, oh, I don't think tithing is for today, I think you're wrong. And I see that Abraham, who was a man of faith, was a tither. And so I think Jesus taught tithing. So I'm going to read some scriptures. Are you okay with that? So listen to me, because maybe you are a tither, and I just want to rehearse your victories. Maybe you're not, and I want you to start. Okay, blessed be the God of Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hands, and he gave him tithe of all. Who was that? That was Abraham. And Genesis 14:20, it says later that he was blessed of all things. You say, well, that's Genesis. Okay, let's go to Leviticus. Who likes to read Leviticus? But I read it twice a year. Okay, in Leviticus 27:30 through 32, and all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord. And concerning the tithe of the herd or the flock or whatever that passes under the rod, the 10th one shall be holy to the Lord. That's in Leviticus. Now we saw Genesis, so we saw Abraham. And then you say, well, Jesus didn't teach it. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And this is Matthew 23:23. I'll read it slowly. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice. And this was very important, because he said, you should do it. You say, I don't think you should tithe. Jesus didn't teach it. He said it. You should tithe, but you shouldn't leave these other things done. So people would tithe and be cruel to people and things like that. And so he's saying, you ought to do it. So I really believe in those early years, my mother teaching me to tithe was a big deal for me. I really believe that was a process in my life that was going to be very, very important. Did I know someday that I would reach the world with the gospel? No way, not at all. Did I know I was going to go to a university and have no help? No, no way at all. I didn't know that. But I committed to give. Now, you say, well, I give to my relatives. Now, it doesn't say give to your poor relatives. It says you give to the Lord. So don't make up things to try and get yourself off the hook. Will you not? Okay, so I'm going to pray with you. So put your hand on your heart. Say, Marilyn, I want to do what the Word says. If I do what the Word says, it's an act of faith. And an act of faith in His Word will bring prosperity. So now, here I am. I have a huge budget because we preach the gospel all over the world, And this is really something. How could I meet that? Do you know I'm 89 years old and I'm doing this still? And I believe tithing is very, very important. And I look at the man who tithed in the New Testament, and he was a Gentile. Isn't that interesting? And he loved to give. And he got his name in the Bible. And a lot of those Jewish people did not get their names in the Bible. They didn't tithe. So I began to look at the patriarchs. Now the patriarchs the heroes and the people that stood out, as examples in the Old Testament. And they were faithful to give tithes. They tithed. They were faithful in it. Well, I'm going to give it to my neighbor next door. They're really hungry. Do you think you could tithe to a church that you went to? Do you think if you're not a pastor, you need a pastor? People, I have found that if you do it God's way, you get the blessings that God has. But if you want to make it up as you go, it doesn't work very well. So who did Abraham tithe to? He tithed to Melchizedek. Who's Melchizedek? And this is in the Old Testament. Well, he was a priest of the Lord. So Melchizedek, the king of Salem, was priest of God Most High. And he blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Then Abraham gave him a tithe of everything. And then it says that Abraham was blessed in all things. Isn't that something? But he tithed. And that's an act of faith. And that's a big deal, because faith is a big deal. How do you get saved? You get saved by faith. And our lifestyle must be a faith lifestyle. Now Jacob, he's another patriarch. He committed to tithe before he had anything. And I want to read you. This is in Genesis 28:22. I don't want you to think, oh, you're just making that up as you go. No. He said, "And this stone which I've set as a pillar shall be God's house, and all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." Oh. And then Paul, you say, well, New Testament. Paul encouraged the believers to commit to give and determine ahead of time what they would give for a special offering. Okay, you say, where is that, Marilyn? It's 1 Corinthians 16:2. "The first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, that there be no collections when I come." He said, you need the first day of the week, if that's probably when they were paid. And so when they got it, that's when they set aside the tithe, which is saying to me, put God first. I'm 89, I still tithe. So you might say to me, well, it doesn't work. Honey, I'm older than you, and I probably started before you. But I tithe. I started tithing at 11 on the apple farm. Now, I just want you to think about this. What are the benefits of giving? Can giving really cause you to prosper? And you can say, well, not in this time. This is a challenging time. Now, I have found in the challenging times, be careful that you're not reasoning away your faith and not tithing. You say, well, where does my tithe go? You need to go to a local church, but if you don't, it goes where you are fed. So that's what I do. I'm fed by my son-in-law. He's a pastor. And it said about Abraham, he prospered greatly, so much that he and his nephew Lot had to go their separate ways because of his great wealth. What? Well, why didn't the nephew prosper? He didn't tithe. And people will say to me, you're so old and you still tithe? Of course, because I still want to prosper. I still want to reach the world with the gospel. I'm still on television and all these places. Yes. And it says about Abram, because you're going to say, oh, you're making this up as you go. Abraham was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. That's in Genesis 13:2. And if I look at Jacob, he had an ugly father-in-law. I mean, Laban was a thug. T-H-U-G. Say yuck twice. Yuck. Laban really cheated him. But when he left Laban, he left with prosperity. You say, where is that in the Bible? Genesis 30:43. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous, had large flocks, male servants, and camels, and donkeys. Jacob prospered more than Laban, and he was a tither. So if you say to me, well, you can never prosper that way. And you know, I have good friends, I have relatives that said that to me. But I have prospered through the years. And when I met my husband, we tithed. And that was before we were in the ministry. I was teaching school. He had a city salesman job. He had really good profit, you know. We didn't even think of not tithing. We tithed. And I wonder sometimes, and maybe you will disagree with this, but it's okay, just don't be disagreeable. I wonder sometimes, would God have called us into the ministry, pastoring worldwide, television, radio, all the things we've done, if we hadn't tithed? See, I don't think so. I think where your money goes is where your heart is. Where is your heart? In your new car? Where is your heart? In your new house? In your new furniture? Did you do that instead of tithe? See, I believe, okay, that if you had tithed, you could have had both. God could have blessed you in very unique ways. And so I look at this and I think, my goodness, Jacob prospered more than Laban. He was exceedingly prosperous, had large flocks, male servants, and camels and donkeys. And I look at this Cornelius, he was a Gentile, and he tithed, and he made prayer, and it said he had a memorial before God. And what happened? He and his family received salvation. Now you're going to say again, where is that in the Bible? That's in Acts 10. He prospered. Would you like your name written in heaven on special things that you do? Not just that you're born again, but also that you're a tither, you're a giver. And it talks about being blessed in giving. And I have found sometimes when I'm really believing for something big, I want to do more in television than I'm doing, I want to have a big healing meeting, I up my giving. And I'm saying, God, I'm sowing this seed because I'm believing to prosper. So if I go back through my years, starting to tithe when I was so young, because my mother told me, and she said it's in the Bible, starting to tithe and being able to finish at a university, debt-free, going on radio, and my husband said to me, the church isn't going to pay for it. You're going to have to believe God. It's your baby, you'll have to feed it. And I upped my giving and eventually went all over the world. So I don't want to have a fight with you. I just want you to know this is biblical. This is very biblical. And I look at the people who tithe in the Old Testament, and I look at how God blessed them in the most unusual ways, and He gives us them as examples. And God Himself will reward you for giving. So when I look at Matthew, it says, when you do a charitable deed, and do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your charitable deed may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret Himself will reward you openly. See, I'm just giving you a little bit of this. But this is lifestyle for me. This is Bible. So if you say it doesn't work, you're not as old as I am. And I can tell you it works. And I'm believing for bigger things. Yeah. You say, well, you're awfully old. I don't care how old I am. Doesn't say when you get old, don't believe big. Does it? I don't believe it does. I haven't found it yet. And so I'm believing to have a healing meeting in Saudi Arabia. You say, well, you're a woman, don't you know that? Yeah, I know that. But this is a strange thing about Muslims. They love old women, and I fit it well. So I've got it out there as one of my goals. Now, let's pray together about your goal. You say, I want God to prosper me. Well, are you willing to walk out in faith? Are you willing to tithe? Are you willing to be a giver, to sow seed? Are you willing to prosper? I'm sure you are. I'm just positive. Who says, oh, I just want to be poor? Nobody says that. You say, if they said that, that'd be stupid. You're right. So let's just pray. And I'm going to pray about where you go to church, too. You need to be in a church. You need to tithe to a church. You say, well, you want me to give to your ministry? I do. But you can give offerings. Can you really outgive God? I haven't found I could. I have found it's a process going from faith to faith, strength to strength, glory to glory. Listen, prosperity to prosperity. So let's just pray. So, Father, I thank you for everyone who watches this. Your desire is for your people to prosper. Your desire is also for us to be generous. Your desire is for us to look to you and not to people. Your desire is for us to be faithful in our tithing, in our offerings, in our church attendance. Father, I thank you that everyone who watches this feels a divine fire to listen and obey and receive in Jesus' name.